Saddle up, bone ponies. It's time for another episode of Tabletop Totality. I'm Steve.
I'm Neil.
And I am Cody. I think. That's what they tell me anyway.
I think so too. It's kind of hard to be sure sometimes, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
I don't believe it.
It all depends on what you
Depends on the day.
Be real and
yeah.
I hear it's a tabletop totality conspiracy theory.
Yeah. That's right. Big tabletops behind it.
Yep. Exactly.
So, what are we talking about today, Steve?
So today we're talking about keeping your players' focus at the table, like making sure that your players are staying on track more or less.
You mean keeping a tight ship?
Exactly. Keeping a tight ship.
Tight ships.
Yeah, so I just recently ran my first game in about 10 years on one of our live streams.
What'd you do it for?
We did it for Extra Life, and just as a general stream, we're going to be doing those starting monthly going forward. And they're all going to be Extra Life charity streams. But yeah, I just did one. It's the first time that I've DM'd in about 10 years. And when I was designing that session, I tried to create situations that would give everyone in the party a chance to do something. And I feel like that is a really good way to keep the players engaged. And I was just wondering what measures you guys take to make sure that all of your players have something to do at your games.
Neil, do you want to take that one first? You want me to go at it?
I'll take this one first. So it is it's difficult, I feel, first session or one shot to figure out how to keep your players engaged as their characters, because they themselves don't fully understand how they're playing their character yet.
Yeah.
So I feel like in that aspect, to kind of what you experienced during the live stream that we did, that live play, may have been a lot of that, because I know for myself as that player, I'm not sure how I wanted to think about things or how I wanted to do things. But it does 100% help, and I do it myself, is I still look at what that character is capable of for each party member and say, all right, I'm going to tailor it so they have things to do here, things to do there. Or if they're in an encounter, I'm going to make sure they can at least harm the creature that I'm throwing them at. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's definitely something you have to look at, and it's one of, I think, the hardest things to do, and that measure is just getting used to that chemistry between what the player wants to do with their character and what you kind of want the party to be able to do moving forward or into a situation,
Yeah, I mean, like when I say that I tried to keep all the players engaged, and tried to do something for them, I was basing that entirely around, because, like you said, it's hard to do for a one shot. So basically, I tried to design all of the puzzles around the abilities of the players that I had. So there were certain like all the puzzles had multiple solutions. And I tried to develop solutions based around the abilities of all the characters. So, for example, the first room that you guys came into was one where somebody had to hit a crystal above a door across a pit with a lightning spell, and I knew that you, Neil, had lightning arrow as a prepared spell, but I also provided a lightning wand for in case that solution didn't come through. And then Robert wound up solving it with chromatic orb, which wasn't something that I expected him to do.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, there was also a second solution where there were switches on torches on the other side of the pit, that if two people had gotten to the other side of the pit and hit, they would have been able to unlock the door.
Sorry.
It's fine. But the reason I did that is because I knew that basically everybody had some kind of a teleportation ability that would allow them to teleport the distance across the pit. So I figured if one solution didn't work, then you could determine another solution, and that was just kind of one of the things I wanted to do to try to like
Well, yeah, like the best
cater
way
to
to make
everybody.
sure that all of your players stay engaged is to give everybody some form of option in any situation. Let
Hmm.
it alone letting the party either, if everybody in the party has good persuasion skills, so that could be intimidating, diplomacy, you know what I mean, as it used to be called. Now it is intimidate and persuasion. It Either way is an option though. So you can
Hmm.
have the face of the party handle a situation, or the beefcake, if you would, who's probably very well in intimidate, handle a diplomacy situation, both successfully, but both vastly different. So
Yeah.
like that's one of my biggest ways is I give multiple solutions for a problem to what I think each character would do, but then you never know. There's always another solution that you're not even thinking about, you know.
Right.
So as
Right.
long as you keep your options even more open, so it's not just they have to do this one step, otherwise the whole thing goes down. You know, I think that's a good way.
Well, I think that's the point that I would make is that I feel like in my stage, my level of DMing, like where I'm at, my comfortability where I'm at, is that I tend to leave things open enough so that if they don't necessarily get the one thing that I was thinking of, but they might come close to it, I say, "Oh, okay, well, they didn't succeed at this, but they did come up with something nice." And I also enjoy that process too of being like, I kind of want them to figure this out
Hmm.
and figure out something that works without me maybe spelling it out what it is that does this.
Hmm.
I want them to come up and be like, oh, well, maybe we have to do this, and that's what opens this. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. Or, like I'm willing to flex on things like that to help with the flow
Yeah.
of the game, I think. The other point I would like to make is that as much as you are trying to come up with content for the player or you're trying to come up with things for them to do or for their characters to do, they also have to be a part of that agreement as well, where they are going to be actively doing things to move that game forward
Yeah.
Hmm.
because it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel like the best thing that could happen to keep everybody like into it is make sure that they've invested something into it, into that character. That they want to do some of these things. So even for that one shot, for me, like it's kind of hard to maybe get into the idea of a one shot. When we did the one for when we did it for game day, for Extra Life's game day,
Yeah.
I played my artificer fighter, Grizzledurn, and it was something that I had come up with during a podcast, but it wasn't something that I was overly attached to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I could tell you every in and out of his thought process or whatever.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But for this one with the Ursarak for Kuraba, I came up with a story where his son had been kidnapped by some sort of like a shadow fell being, and that explained why he was a shadow touched
Yeah.
character. And I came up with a backstory, and that's how I made him behave. And so it was something just for
Yeah.
me to follow from the get go, so I could just say, "Yep, my guy only cares about this." Like
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
the one thing that if they can prove it to him, or if they can motivate him with this, that this is what he'll respond to.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of what I mean, where it's a two-part thing. It's not just the DM; the player should also be putting in something that's like you know to help move it along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. So yeah.
Y'all
So
better agree.
oh, I
I
agree.
now take back everything.
Well, then I disagree with everything that I previously agreed with.
Nice.
So
All right then.
I'll see
Constructive.
you ding dongs later.
In that session that I created, despite my ability, despite me trying to give everybody things to do, I feel like I made what I would consider a beginner's mistake. I accidentally created an area in there that was a little bit more challenging than I thought. It wasn't really challenging; it was just bigger and had a bigger scope than I thought that it would have.
Hmm.
And the result of that is that it wound up focusing in on only one or two members of the team instead of all four of them. And I felt really bad about that. There was a good portion of the game where a couple of the players didn't really have all that much to do. So, what kind of advice could you guys give in regards to that sort of mistake? Like, what could I have done differently, either in planning that out or during the game after realizing that these players weren't really going to have a whole lot to do in this place? Like, what should I have done, or what could somebody who falls into this mistake do if they come across it?
So the one thing that I would say that I has found that has helped me out probably the most in a lot of these situations is doing the non-combat initiative order,
Hmm.
so that I have to go from player to player,
Okay.
and I can sit there and I can tick through, on my notebook every time I interact with a player, and that's a good way for me to be like, okay, everybody has done something, or they've at least had a chance to do something.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes players can. I've had it where players have been like, I don't know what I want to do, or they're more interested in their phone or whatever, watching a video with somebody than they are with what's going on at the table. That's not your fault.
Hmm.
That didn't happen during this last session that you're speaking about.
Yeah.
But taking that non-combat initiative order at least puts a little bit of pressure on the player to be like, "This is your turn. What are you going to do?"
Yeah, think about
Right.
Because
something.
you have a chance to do something now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because sometimes people, and I've had this before too, where people, excuse me, I've had this happen before with people where they, maybe newer players tend to take a back seat to more experienced players,
Hmm.
because more experienced players know that, like, hey, I don't get that many turns in an hour. I want to try to do as much as I can. I want as much turn equity as I can on my turn.
Yeah.
And I feel like at least giving that option to the player is a good way of like, all right, you're up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a chance to influence the world right now. What are you doing?
Yep.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with a lot of that.
Where you get into a situation where you, as the overlord, have recognized that there might be a lapse where you might have some of the party not doing anything or players not doing anything. It's okay for you to address that as the overlord,
Hmm.
and just be like, hey, you guys haven't really done much here. What do you think? Like, what are you thinking? What are your characters thinking?
Yeah.
That's another good way, is to put it right flat out. Be like, what's Runerick doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Neil, how do you feel about this or whatever? What's your character doing in this situation? Is he going to sit around and wait for the rogue to go scout it out? Or is he going to say, no, I'm going to go ahead and look into this?
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's what my biggest advice would be. So a lot of people try and as an overlord kind of like sit back and don't give much to their players when they're stuck. And I disagree. I think there is a certain aspect of it. Like a lot of the time, I'll ask a player, "All right, hey, your character deals with this, this, and this. This thing has an arcane nature, which your character deals with. How about you give me an intelligence roll, or how about you give me a wisdom roll for how this nature's reacting, type of stuff." And then if they give me a decent roll, I'll give them a tip. I'll be like, all right,
Yeah.
here, this, like, with what happened in this maze that we were running, that you were doing, which Robert later on figured out he could blind the pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took a little bit, but then he started to decide, no, you know what, I need to start moving around, I need to start doing something, and he
Hmm.
took that initiative. But sometimes I feel like giving it a couple of rounds sounds like a good idea, but after one round, on that second round, if I'm asked, if they go, yeah, I'm just gonna wait back, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, what would your player kind of think? I try and initiate that after the second round. I give a round of thought. Second round, there should be some form of help or action, something starting to develop,
Yeah.
because rounds take so long. they
Yeah.
really they really do. And you're sitting at the table, and I And I think especially when you're sitting at a table that is now over the internet, that
Mhm.
distraction level
It's much
is
harder.
much more difficult. So
Yeah.
around naturally, if you're sitting at the table, you're naturally more invested. Maybe you're eating some chips. You're looking at what the board. You're looking at what somebody's doing. There is none of that. There is no board.
You know what you're doing. You're eating trolleys and
Exactly.
Doritos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not
And
sponsored, but we'd love to be.
oh,
Mhm.
by trolleys, I'd sell a kidney.
Dude, if I get the trolley sponsorship from Trolley,
Yeah.
it's done, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we know.
Absolutely.
That's
Success.
how we know we made it.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
But
Started
to
from the bottom. Now we're sponsored by Trolley.
but yeah, just giving that tip out, especially now earlier, I feel over these electronic sessions is paramount.
Yeah.
It is something that keeps somebody engaged, it keeps them thinking. So like just that tip, I feel as an overlord, you're not giving away your riddle. It's this is what this player, this character would naturally be thinking, and maybe the player doesn't naturally think that way. They're playing something that's vastly different than their own mindset. They've been a
Yeah.
barbarian their whole life, now they're playing a wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You know what I mean?
another thing that I would like to pigtail onto that would be
I'll allow
that I find that in my style of role playing, like when I'm the player, I love to ask questions.
it. Mm-hmm.
I love to be like, well, what's up with this? Can this be moved? Can this be touched? Can this, whatever? What can I interact with in the
Mhm.
world? I like figuring that out, and I like asking questions. So that's a cue for me too when I'm dealing with my players. If they're not asking questions about everything that I'm saying or everything that I'm telling or I'm narrating, if they're not curious about everything I'm spelling out, that's a big red flag for me because
Yeah.
I'm like, what are they not getting?
Well, that's
Are they not following this?
yeah.
Are they not interested in this? Um, so don't be afraid as the overlord to ask the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was saying before. Like, hey, what's Runerick? What does Runerick think
Yeah.
about this? Not Neil. What do you think we should do? Oh, it makes sense. Yeah, have the rogue go down the hallway and check for traps. No, what is the paladin going to do in this
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah.
That's a big thing to
Yeah.
me anyway.
I agree. And that's a good way to keep somebody out of kind of that metagaming aspect of I'm just gonna sit back, and then when they think about the session they think, man, I really didn't do anything.
No
You
bum
know what I
pony has
mean?
ever metagamed. That's
Yeah.
all I'm gonna say.
But it keeps it just I feel like it keeps you more in the role play of the game, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if your character knows that, or like you as a player knows that might be the best bet, is your character really gonna just twiddle his thumbs in a dungeon or her thumbs in
Right.
a dungeon?
Well, so
You know?
something we saw even last night that just came to mind was
Mhm.
our friend Sean from the Mighty G Nation. Our friend Sean plays a barbarian Torgus,
Mhm.
and I play this wizard Graz. And Graz is very smart, and Torgus is not very smart. The dwarf is not very smart,
Mhm.
and we kind of have like a love hate relationship going on where we help each other, but we are kind of making fun of each other the entire
Oh
time.
yes, yeah, that is it. That is the
Yeah, and we
relationship.
do things to piss each other off all the time. But he also did a very good thing like yesterday where there was a point where he was looking at things and it was beyond the scope of the character to handle them.
Yep.
But he was like, "Can I go and talk to the wizard? Can I
Mhm.
go and do this? Can I go and do that?" So he found ways to be involved in something that even his character couldn't figure out
Mhm.
by being like, I have the information that somebody else doesn't have, and I'm going to go bring it to them and make this happen.
Mhm.
So just as much as we were saying, like, yes, it's the overlord's part to kind of cater to that sort of stuff. Also, players can make things move too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'd agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really good advice. Like, I didn't even think about like asking them like, what are your characters thinking about this and stuff, and like basically the way that I was sort of trying to act on it is there were monsters in there in the maze that I was going to have attack them um while you guys were off exploring, but they kept rolling really low on their perception, so they didn't realize that there were these two Ursarak just hanging out in the one room, so they never got attacked until like right before the fight actually happened. So like
Mhm.
that was kind of what I was gonna do as the Overlord, just in control of the dungeon. But it was just tough because I felt like every time that I was asking either of them like, "What do you guys want to do?" they would just be like, "Oh, we're just gonna stay here. We're just gonna wait until Cody and Neil get back, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
find out what's going on." And it was just kind of.
So what I advise for a situation like that,
Mhm.
which we'll see how people, take this, is not so much leave
Chugga
it.
chugga choo choo is what he's gonna
No,
say.
no, no, no. It is not so much leave it up to a creature rolling a perception check to be able to find them out there. It's,
Mhm.
hey, if these characters don't, if they just stay here for 2 turns, they're gonna get attacked.
Flat
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
Flat
I was
out.
just thinking the same thing. I was like, it doesn't have to be like
Because
you can do that,
yeah,
obviously, but also you have to remember that for the sake of the story, like, you know, okay, so the dwarves and Bilbo have made it out in like, near the Misty Mountains, and they encounter the trolls, right?
Mhm.
And
hmm
that's like a whole big thing that happens, right? And the trolls find them. Trolls find all of them, and it's a big problem, And then it's an encounter that has to be solved. It's unavoidable, basically,
yeah,
Mhm.
you know. And you can still make things like that happen and not be railroading
exactly.
because you're just trying to push along the events of the night or the encounters or just even
Show the threat of
Yeah.
yeah,
being in a dungeon like this. You know what I mean?
sure,
I don't want to be standing here because
Yeah.
just because I think this is safe, it actually isn't. It may be more beneficial for me to have to deal with this statue that may
Yeah.
shoot laser beams at me
Yeah.
because who knows when
freaking
I'm gonna
laser
get attacked
beams.
out of its
Yeah.
freaking forehead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, or even like we were saying, to give the player something to do,
It's that extra
because
notch or
yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
good advice.
don't be afraid too. Like you can go ahead and give hints, like Neil was saying before. You
Hmm.
can give these like little like divine overlord hints like to the players, and don't be afraid to cater it to that player's thing. Because like I've done it before, where I'm like, hey, yeah, Oris is patient enough to sit here and observe every little thing, but Brug Narsh our barbarian just happens to bump into the thing that makes it work.
Yeah.
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 You know
No,
what I
that's
mean?
Yeah.
So there's
that's
a
That's
how it
way
goes.
of
Like that's
doing
the beauty of
things.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what had to happen with that was like I kind of like forced the solution to you guys instead of having you go through the dungeon and
And
because
that's
it
part of it.
yeah, because it would because we were already in that maze for like 2 hours and it was like you guys aren't going to find the other three switches in the next 20 minutes. It's going to be
Well,
another.
it's also about the fun of it too, because like I remember, like I did this really big dungeon in Talaraxia
Hmm.
for this evil death god,
Oh,
the
yeah, I
Brazina,
remember this.
and it was this big dungeon, and every floor, every encounter was like worse and worse for the party. Like it got harder and
Mhm.
harder, and it got to the point where like they had already done so much, they had resolved so much of what had to happen that there was like a couple like other little chambers and things that I had planned,
Hmm.
crumpled them up and threw it out
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I was like, everybody is so done. They've accomplished everything they're going to accomplish. To force them through these extra things that have nothing to do with the actual story,
Hmm.
they're
Mhm.
just extra challenges. It's not going to be fun for anybody.
Oh yeah, I
It's not
did.
going to be fun for me. It's not going to be fun for them. So you can always like I always, if you listen to any of our podcasts, I'm a big fan of like say hang loose on things. Don't figure everything out. Don't flesh
Hmm.
everything out. Leave yourself that 30%, wiggle room so that
Yeah.
you can make things happen.
Flying off by the seat of your pants is my favorite way to
Flying with
do
your pants off is the best way to do it,
it. Yeah.
folks.
Indeed. That's
Yeah.
how bow and ponies do it. Yeah, I wound up doing the exact same thing. I cut an entire room out of the dungeon because of the amount of time that it was taking in the maze.
That
Mhm.
was where we became Care Bears in that room, right?
Mhm.
Exactly.
That was
Yeah,
awesome.
I
Exactly.
knew it. I knew it.
Well, you know, it happens.
I wanted to be like the sleepy Care Bear.
Mm. It's not winter time yet. You had to
Yeah,
wait until it's getting close to winter for
maybe
that.
The
spring.
forever sleepy bear.
Oh Lord.
Oh no,
I don't think anybody wants to be the forever sleeping bear.
no. So yeah, so after all of it, towards the end of the night, the group is kind of getting a little bit rambunctious, one might say, a little bit
What are you, our
unruly.
dad?
Yeah,
It's
I'm your overlord and your dad.
Better not wake up
no.
that baby.
But like, do you guys have any advice regarding regaining control of a table that is kind of going
Swift and sudden
oh
violence.
yeah.
so, so with Cody referencing our Strahd campaign, I am the overlord for that. The party's group name is Chaos Fish. If this paints any picture for you,
With a K and a P
yes,
and a Y.
Mm.
Chaos Fish. All right, as Cody was
We do
saying,
jobs.
yeah, many of the party members. This is not like your optimal mercenary group. No, they all just kind of, except for one, use each other to complete the jobs. And if one of them does, if one of them gets hurt, it doesn't
We're kind of
matter.
like the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I would say so. But because of this play style that they have, it bleeds off the table very much.
Hmm.
And there are points in times where it gets very unruly, and I'm like explaining something, and like every 3 seconds, I just get cut off, or or somebody goes to say something else, and it's the heart. It's the heart of it. Everybody, if I know
Yeah.
that's happening, it's people having fun, for the most part.
Hmm.
It's never truly done vindictively. Um, but the best way I find to just do that is just kind of like I just continue to try and talk. And
Yeah,
eventually, everybody's going to get tired of trying to talk over each other, and they'll just let me go.
yeah. Well, and I've had it before too with Toleraxia because
Oh, yeah.
that's a big group,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and now to the point where we're only playing like maybe like once a month. It's people are excited when we play, and we haven't seen each other in a month, and we're like, hey, like everybody's got stuff to talk about, and there's also we've been playing the game now for like 2 years, so there's a whole back catalog of inside jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
So anytime something is remotely funny, it gets derailed a little bit,
Yeah.
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 And I could sit there and be a dick and like holler at people, but who's gonna want to hang out with me and play in the game if I'm
Yeah.
sitting there being an asshole? Like people want to come and have fun, and as long as it's all in good fun and you're not hurting anybody, And I think at a certain point you just say, "All right, guys, like, do we want to continue? Do we want to take 5?"
Yeah, we got to
You
take
know,
5 minutes.
Yeah.
You
that's
got
a
to
good
get the
way
funnies
too.
out.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Seriously, guys,
Yeah.
go get some water.
Yeah, get them away
We-
from the table so when they come back, they'll forget what even was going on.
Yeah.
one of the we played a game that had like I don't even know how many players, but we used to have to play in shifts, and we would say half of you go outside and the rest of you sit at the table and we'll play, and then we'll switch it around
Hmm.
because the other players were so new. There were so many of them that if there was any sort of side conversation, it was debilitating to the game
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you could deal with one person chatting or two people kind of saying something on the side, but when you got 4 or 5 people that are talking, even if they're talking quietly while you're trying to narrate and our players are trying to do their thing, it's too much.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that like as an overlord, you need to you almost because if you start to be stringent about it, they're going to do it even more. The
Hmm.
people at your table are not going to care. They're going to be like, it doesn't really matter. We do this all, you're always like this. But then if you allow them to get it out, you kind of ride with it. It's like if you're an actor or a comedian, you gotta give time for the audience to react. and you
Mhm.
can't start going back into your acting or your comedic routine until the audience is done reacting. You can try, but then it's going to hinder the performance. And I feel like overlording is very similar to that. If I am in my big descriptive pro written, like all prose written piece, and I keep getting this like interrupted after each sentence, I'm gonna stop trying to get out that description
Yeah.
and either joke around with what's going on, and once the joke is done, go back into it, or I'm gonna end up skipping a little bit because I know, all right, their attention span this time around sadly is not there, and
Mhm.
sadly all of my description is, it hurts a little bit. You shed a little bit of a tear, but then you
Yeah.
drink
It's
that
too much
tear, and it
description.
and it fuels your night rights as you plan the murder of your entire party.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Tears are the fuel you need to TPK all of your
That's
friends.
it. You like, and this is the other thing for the players watching. Maybe those lifetime players, you lucky people. Just know every time you derail your overlord, they now have another reason to plot to kill you.
Yes, that's fair. Entirely fair. And I've gotten to the point too. Maybe it's not cool. But I've gotten to the point where I've said, "Hey guys, you know, this part is actually important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know, this part you should pay attention to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's sure people can sit there and cry about breaking the immersion or whatever, but
They already
Eh,
broke
eh,
it.
eh, right. I'm going to break the immersion by telling you to focus on what's really important that's going to happen that you've waited months to figure out,
Yeah.
or what's more destructive to just let you talk over me while I'm describing it and then nobody gets it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you just yawn?
I'm tired. What do you want?
Did we
We're
bore you, Steven?
we need to now draw him in. He's a distracted player.
I
Yeah,
know. I
exactly.
know.
Well, maybe
Wake up!
I'm trying. I'm
Get your dice.
I'll try to get back on focus with this last topic that I have for this. So we've all been playing our games online because of the distance between us
Mhm.
and the
Space between us.
yeah, and the current global situation. And this has introduced an element of electronic distraction that was previously somewhat present at the table, but it has increased dramatically. So, how do you deal with electronic distractions such as phones or other open windows during a play session?
So, just real quick, right there, what happened, that is the perfect explanation of what I was trying to say prior. You have your players laughing about it, you just power through. You
Yeah.
just keep going.
Steve just said,
Neil,
yep.
Neil. Okay, I'm, you describing players talking over you and talking and you have to just power through. That's every conversation I have with every person I know. So I completely understand.
He's been born for this.
Exactly. I don't
You
know why I don't
merely
DM more
adopted the
often.
talking over
Yeah.
people. I was
Yeah.
born
I
in
was born to be a DM.
it. You want to take this one first, Cody?
I don't even know where we are. No, I knew we were saying about how technology can be a big
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I've had friends of mine that have had their sheets and everything on their phone, and they love it because hey, they got their character in their pocket, right? Like
Mhm.
okay, they can technically sit down and play, or they got a dice roller on their phone or whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool, but I kind of see that it kind of backfires. I think it's like when you haven't seen a friend in a long time. Like the last thing I want to do is pull my phone out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to sit there and I want to talk to my friend. I saw a good buddy yesterday I haven't seen in years. I didn't look at my phone until he left.
Yeah.
You know, it's like going out to dinner. Everybody put their phones away or put them on the table and stack them up.
Yeah.
Keep everybody from messing with them.
Mhm.
So if you find that it's a problem, like at your table, address it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sometimes people talk about these things like they're taboo, like you can't approach this with your players, but like your players you're supposed to be your friends, right? And you're supposed to
Mhm.
be their friend, and just sit there and say, "Hey, man, I worked really hard on this session, and I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, but I spent like 10 hours writing this, and I'm here to do this play with you guys tonight. And every time I look at you, you're on your phone or you're
Mm-hmm.
laughing at a TikTok video or whatever." And it's
Or you're
like,
Yeah.
trying to show another player something on the
right,
phone as
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
pay
Yeah.
attention.
right. So it's obviously it's a little bit harder to do it now because we said we have distance between us. We live in different states. With the pandemic, obviously nobody was getting together. We had it good for a while. We were playing like every other week in person, and that was awesome.
Amazing. Those
And
times were life.
yeah, yeah, golden days. And now that's a distant memory. Now we're lucky to get in like a session per game a month.
Hmm.
So it's harder because you can't see what the other person's doing. I
Right.
can't tell what you're doing on your computer.
Yeah.
But I will know if you're not engaged,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
because it's just like you remember the session when Sean our buddy Sean had his microphone muted and
Yes.
we
Yeah.
commented, we were like, what the hell is his problem? We're like, he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
And we were like, are you just tired out or whatever? And he's like sitting there yapping away. He's muted,
Yeah.
and it went on for like, it must have gone on for like 10
Hours.
or, yeah,
It
for a
was.
I almost
long
want to
time it
say
went on.
it was
I
like
want
an
to.
hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like we did multiple. It was actually a quick moving session because we did
Yeah.
yeah,
multiple things. Multiple things were going on, and on his end, he just thought none of us fucking wanted
None
to
of us.
listen to
Yeah.
him.
yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're just blowing me off. They're not paying
Yeah,
attention to me.
but he kept trying because like none of us were like there's how
He's
many
a
people
sucker
are
for
in that call?
punishment,
There's
is
like
what it
six.
is.
There's like 6 or 5 of us technically in this call. So you gotta
Six,
Yeah.
think,
yeah.
there's everybody's a little bit smaller depending on
Hmm.
how you have it rotate. Some people like
And
to
we got
put
our
it
roll
on.
20 map or what
Yeah.
up.
So like
Yeah.
there's a bunch going on, and it wasn't until like one moment I looked down and I was like, Sean, you're talking. You're muted. And he goes, oh my god.
but it was something that it was like I knew. I was
Yeah.
like, there's something up because he's not doing anything. Like he's
Yeah.
not doing that was a little extreme, but I knew enough to be like, Sean would have jumped in and said something at this point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I feel like that comes with the more experience you have as an overlord, as a storyteller, and also the more familiarity you get with your players.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't take anything that happened with you for your one shot too seriously
Oh yeah.
because
No.
one shots are hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the point of a one
Absolutely.
shot is really to kind of be
Just
loose and
blowing off
fun,
steam.
just right.
Yeah.
And when it gets to like the more involved stuff, like
Hmm.
I knew right away, like when I put something in, like, oh, I'm gonna put this item in a dungeon. I'm like, Sean's gonna put this on. Like I just know, like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is for him, or I'm gonna leave this here and I hope this person finds it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And so that familiarity and stuff, it's hard to get for a one shot, but I think as you start doing more and more DMing, you're going to get more and more comfortable with people, and you're going to know, like, okay, yep, Cody's going to laugh at something I say, make a quick joke, but then he's going to get back to playing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, you'll know when to react and when not to. And
right.
I would just like, I think the biggest thing, if you are sitting down playing any tabletop RPG, whatever it may be, you're
Which you should
overlording.
be.
Everybody should be. You're
Yep.
overlording, and you have a couple people who are just either they pull up videos, they're dropping stuff in chats while you're explaining things that's for the whole party, or certain things of that nature going on. Then there's some level of distraction, and if it's like aggressive, they're constantly dropping links to things in because now you can do that in all the calls. That's really how you have all your side conversations,
Yeah.
is mainly dropping links or writing comments into the text aspect of it. You just mentioned, hey guys, pay attention.
Hmm.
Hey guys, I see that this stuff's going on. Did it at the end of the session, address it? Was this a good session? What do you think I could have done better? What do you think I could have done worse? Because it's either that person's just being a dick and doesn't really want to sit there and play, and they just want to do all these other distracting things, or something's fundamentally off from your play group to what you're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think communication is like a huge,
That's just like
huge,
in
huge
anything
thing.
in life.
Yeah,
You know?
because I mean, there's been times like I've had sessions, even in Toleraxia, I've had sessions where I'm like, I reveal something or something happens, and I look around the table and like everybody's kind of like stoic,
Mhm.
and I'm like, it missed, like it didn't hit home with these guys. Like, they don't like it. Like it sucks. And I've gone home and I've talked to people and I've been like, oh, I don't know, Frank. I think they hate it, or I don't know. I don't know. And then you get back to the next session and they're sitting there talking about everything, and they're like, yeah, well, then this happened and then that happened, and or they're explaining it to somebody else, and you're like, okay, so maybe they do like it. And I've had to flat out just be like, was this something that you were cool with, or you know
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
just for
gotta.
my own
Yeah.
just for my own peace of mind.
Hmm.
Because that's you never want to go home being like, oh, I screwed
I
up and nobody
botched
had
that one
fun.
again.
Yeah, like nobody wants that.
But you also got to give time. Like as an overlord, it's very difficult because you want to see people's reactions, but most of the players want to think before they give reaction to something.
Exactly.
They have to
Yeah.
digest this. Where
Well,
you've been sitting on this for maybe a month now, waiting to release this, and you finally did, and
Hmm.
everybody's just like they're looking at you, and you're like, "Did I do good?"
Yeah.
well, even last night you leveled us up to level 7, and you're like, "Did you hear that, Cody?" And I was like, "Yep." And you're like, "Well, I thought you'd be more excited because you've been asking about leveling up." And I'm like, "Uh huh." And you're like, "Well, are you happy?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Well, you didn't say anything." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm leveling up."
Yeah.
Like I've been waiting for it,
I have no time for you.
Right, I have to pick spells. Come on.
Yeah.
But as you were talking before, Steve, I guess to wrap it up is you're saying about the technology, and the technology is great because being
Hmm.
able to access things like D&D Beyond or look up a spell,
Oh, look up something
on
real
the
quick.
fly, yeah, that's great. And having many hands in the kitchen, sometimes makes lighter work. And I've had it's been great where I can sit there and say, hey, Neil, can you slide this guy over on the battle map for me? And Sean, can you look up Fireball or whatever while I'm doing something else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's silly not to use the technology because it makes things so much
Yep.
easier. But you also you got to moderate it.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
even
Absolutely.
on to that point, you can even do that at a regular table setting. Don't be afraid as the overlord to think you have to have control over everything.
Put them to work.
Exactly. if they go, oh snap, can I do this, this, and this? I'll be like, I don't know. Can you? Why don't you bring me the evidence that you can do this, and
Yeah.
then I'll make the ruling on
Right,
it.
and don't be afraid either. Too, as a younger DM, or not younger, because you're
Less
old
experience.
fuck, but if you sit there and you look at it and you go, hey, you just came out of left field with some random question, I'd be like, okay, you tell me how it works.
Hmm.
How does this make sense to you that you're gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can easily be thrown off guard by somebody doing that. I've seen younger DMs or
Less
overlords,
experience. Less
less
experience.
experience, get
And younger. No,
and younger. Yeah, definitely younger.
Greener overlords.
I don't know.
Yeah. More handsome,
I mean, how
younger.
do you fit 9 giant spiders into a room that's 20 by
Oh,
40 by 20?
professionally play tested. How do you do that one? Riddle me this.
Batman. Anyway, as we get more distracted.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta get back on
Was
track.
that right? We had to tighten up this ship.
Yeah. Loose
Swap the
lips.
poop deck.
Sink ships.
Indeed.
And your
Ponies.
RP sessions.
Yeah.
Hey,
And
do you know that this podcast can be supported on Anchor.fm? That you can actually go and support us monetarily if you like our podcast, which
I
would
knew
be super, super cool.
You
I
like
knew
Steve?
that.
You like Steve's input? Buy him a coffee.
Yeah. Exactly.
Coffee fee.
Coffee. And then you can just support us in general by going on over to our Patreon, link in the description below, and joining any one of our tiers that each offer awesome, specifically curated creatures, stories, items,
Custom built, baby.
just for all of our bone ponies out there.
Just for the
Absolutely.
special bone ponies.
Yep, and we've also started putting up our stuff onto Drive-Thru RPG. So if you go look that up, our first classic story, Sewer Goblins, has gone up.
Instant classic, folks.
Absolute classic. So go check that out and throw some. It's available for free, but you can throw some money at it if you'd like. But yeah, so you can support us that way as well. And more of the adventures are going to start going up onto Drive-Thru RPG going forward.
What do you do when you got a sewer full of goblins, folks? You gotta go find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
This is
It's
the solution, we tell you.
It's a low level adventure, and it is part of our Any Town RPG,
Correct.
where you can plug and play our setting, or you can plug and play this adventure in any one of your settings. So you could put it into your own city. You could drop it into something like, something in Faerun. You could do whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It is made to be malleable, like non-baked clay.
Ooh,
Exactly.
we're gonna do like a ghost thing on Steve's OnlyFans,
Spooky.
which will also be in the link below.
Yeah.
Will it? Because I'm.
He doesn't even know we've crafted it.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of it, but if it's there, I mean, I'll.
we needed more
exclusive content.
Yeah.
Only 2 of the 3 of us know about
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
Well, other than that, we hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah, we hope you're able to stay focused through the entire podcast.
Don't get distracted, bone ponies. Save your brain cells. Pay attention. What?
Somebody say something.
Where are we?
Dude, where's my car?
Yeah. This dungeon looks familiar.
Yeah.
I have no memory of this place.
Yep.
It just smells less foul out.
Yeah, the air is less stank down here.
Yeah. All right, though. Thanks for coming, and have a good day.
That's right.
See you later.
Ponies. Set sail.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.